Hello and welcome to our Good Murderer podcast. We are back again with a very different case, but a very sad case nonetheless. I'm joined by Benny Carter. How are you, Ben?
Hello, yes, doing good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this, I don't know why, when we first had our big list of 100 or so cases, this one has always stuck out as a horrible, horrible anomaly. Yeah, really excited to get into this one and pick this apart. How are we? Producer Dan.
Very good, thank you, Ben. We're deep in the murky waters of Series 13 now. The swamp, perhaps. The deep and dark and murky swamp. But yeah, just want to say a little hello to everybody, all our new subscribers and commenters. We read everything, like we always say. We read all the positives, all the negatives. Keep the feedback coming, because it really helps us. It really helps the product. Tom, if you could describe today's case in one word... and it can't be bleak.
Can't be bleak.
The word can't be bleak.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Sorry, the word can't be, yeah.
Yeah, I get
can't be bleak.
I mean, it'd be quite obvious here, and just off camera, Dan was reading the dictionary definition of the case. So I'm going to probably throw it back to you, Dan, so you can actually read the definition. But I would use the word feral. It could be deemed as being derogative. So if you call someone feral, that's absolutely feral. Someone like Dan eating a sandwich next to me, if I said he was being feral, he would probably be offended by it. Completely accurate, he'd be offended.
Tasmanian devil.
But this episode, Genie Wiley, the feral child, you can't really use any other words for it. But yeah, Dan, could you read us the dictionary definition of the word feral?
Feral describes animals or plants that have escaped domestication and returned to a wild state. It refers to untamed, savage or uncontrolled behaviour, often applied to animals. It can also describe humans or situations as unruly or untamed. So Ben, with that in mind, one word to describe this case?
See, I was having this conversation. I was talking to my dad about this case a couple of weeks ago, and obviously this was a highly publicised case, and there are elements of this as when Genie was found. She didn't really escape confinement because the studies then began and the curiosities surrounding her then began. But I think I've spoke about this before in other cases where there have been either confinements or abductions. The terrifying thought for me is how many times this happens and they are not found. And the horrible, evil scum in the world that do not deserve to have children. I mean, we talked a couple of weeks ago about Larry Lovelace and how that case probably wouldn't have happened without his influence. Well, Clark Wiley, who we're going to talk about today, unforgivable actions. So unforgivable will be my word. Very scenic route to that word. Apologies. But unforgivable.
Do you remember that YouTube? Unforgivable.
Yeah, straight away was what I was thinking.
That's what came to my mind.
I don't know if we could play any part of what some of the words he says.
No, you can't. Just that one line, maybe.
You're wearing a Liverpool shirt of all things.
I thought it was Arsenal. But fair enough.
Carlsberg, Liverpool, yeah.
Oh.
Unforgivable.
Unforgivable.
But yes, how about you, Dan? We've got feral, we've got unforgivable. Anything coming to mind?
The first thing that came to mind was heartbreaking, really. It's a really heartbreaking case. It's kind of essentially a life was taken away from somebody. She wasn't allowed to become a fully developed human. And I just find that absolutely heartbreaking.
So yes, guys, look forward to this. It's going to be quite like all the episodes of the series. We have said from the start, it's going to be the darkest series ever. I think we've definitely lived up to that mantle, and I think some of you will be quite excited for the next series where we're going back to more classic true crime cases. We were talking about this in the live stream we did last night. All cases are fucking upsetting. I'm going to swear. All of them are. But yeah, these ones are obviously, we've gone to ones particularly that we found difficult. But like we've always said, we think it's important to share these stories, tell these stories. And this one, yeah, it's no lighter, but it's very different to other ones we've covered this series. Holy are at it again. Now we know they do amazing energy and hydration drinks, but now they're changing the syrup game. Meet the Holy syrup bottle. All you got to do is fill her up with water, pick your flavour, they have loads on offer. But Sandy has chosen raspberry, so I'm going to have that. Pop the syrup pod into its little pocket, pop off the pod lid, and screw the bottle lid back on. And this is the fun bit, you get to choose how strong you want your drink to be by turning this little dial. And then get drinking. Absolutely delicious, it takes your water to a new level. But it's not for dogs, I can't stress that enough. Use our code ICMAP5 for £5 discount on your first order. or head over to the website and use our code ICMAP for 10% off. And get a drink in. So without any further ado, Ben, do you want to introduce today's case?
So this week we are here to discuss Genie Wiley, the feral child, also referred to as locked away for 13 years. So what we're going to do is look into a bit of background on the case, find out exactly how the Wiley family arrived in the situation that they were in, and then explore a truly harrowing timeline of events.
So using the recorded age of 13 at the time of her discovery, along with medical and developmental assessments that were conducted shortly afterwards, researchers are able to give a best estimated timeline for Genie's birth. Working backward from this information, most sources place her to be born in April of 1957. In a timeline where records, are commonly held and things like that, the fact that they're unable to even really figure out her birth or kind of have to have a bit of an estimate here is already a bit of a shock. She was born in the city of Arcadia, California, to Clark and Dorothy Irene Wiley. She was one of 4 children raised in a household shadowed by abuse and tragedy. So only 2 of the 4 Wiley children would survive infancy, which even at that stage, 50% survival rate. And we'll go on to explain how that household wasn't safe for children. So Genie's older brother, John, who did survive, but who would also grow up under the oppressive hand of their father, Clark. The young boy was forbidden from ever speaking to, comforting, or playing with his younger sister. He was punished harshly if he ever disobeyed, and he was forced to witness her suffering for many years. He was reportedly beaten by his father if he was ever caught trying to interact with, or if he made too much noise. The family home was hell. But why were both Genie and John treated so poorly? A great deal of the Wiley family dynamic can be traced back to the childhood and life experiences of their parents, Clark and Dorothy. Dorothy was around 20 years younger than Clark, and she was extremely young when she first became pregnant. She had lived a difficult life to this point. Growing up in a poor farming family within a poor community, her parents had migrated to Southern California from an Oklahoma farming homestead, when she was young, fleeing what is known as the Dust Bowl. Which made me think of Interstellar.
Yeah.
During the 1930s, the Dust Bowl turned once fertile and highly profitable farmland into clouds of dirt and dust, killing livestock and driving families to abandon everything they knew. For years, the wind devastated Oklahoma and surrounding states, with dust storms making their way up to Canada, leaving behind almost uninhabitable land. It was around this time that Genie's mother suffered a significant head injury. It's not exactly clear how or why it happened, but Dorothy fell from a great height, landing on the side of her neck. Which just makes... just ignore those wrestling botched moves. And as a result, she sustained long-lasting neurological conditions and a gradual loss of her eyesight in one eye. Those close to her would later say she was a different person after the accident.
Dorothy would later meet and marry a man by the name of Clark Wiley, the man at the centre of Genie's suffering. His life story is also upsetting and problematic. He was the only child born to a man who was unfortunately killed by a lightning strike not long after his birth. And his mother was a woman who owned a brothel and wanted very little to do with her son. So straight away, he's born into an incredibly challenging life right there. But I don't think that would go on to justify what he would do to his own children in any way, shape or form. Reports indicate that his mother had given him quite a feminine name when he was born, and the name that does come up quite a lot when you search it is that he was born a Mildred.
Immediately makes me think of a boy called Sue, Johnny Cash.
Boy called Sue, yeah.
But,
okay.
There's names where, Danny can be a boy or girl's name.
Sure can.
Mildred, harder on the playground, I imagine.
What's the man's name in One Foot in the Grave? Is that anywhere near Mildred?
Oh, that's Mildred, his last name, was it?
Oh, Victor Mildred. Sorry.
Victor Mildred.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't believe.
But yeah, straight away, your father's hit by lightning not long after you're born, and your mum wants nothing to do with you not long after you're born. He's not given a chance from the off here. But this name Mildred would make him the target of ridicule as a child. He was placed into various orphanages around the Pacific Northwest after his father's death, and his mother made very little effort from this point onwards to maintain any kind of relationship with him. In an effort to assert control over his identity, he eventually changed his name to one that sounded more masculine, and he chose Clark. It was fairly masculine.
That's
solid, man.
Yeah.
Shoes.
Oh. Last a lifetime.
Yet despite this, he remained fixated on his mother and how she had abandoned him. Throughout his teenage and adult life, he would regularly speak rudely to any women or young girls he would encounter, and any relationships he held were extremely brief. And this was allegedly due to issues relating to control and violence. Not long after he turned 21, his mother tried to rebuild their relationship, which Clark turned down at almost every opportunity. She would try her best to spend as much time with her son as possible in order to make up for lost time, whilst Clark would actively look for ways to belittle and mistreat his estranged mother. Later, Genie's brother and some scientists suggested that Clark's hatred of his own mother affected how he treated Genie, Dorothy, and multiple other women. As an adult, Clark started working various engineer and labor positions in aviation factories, eventually becoming a flight mechanic during World War II and earning a decent income in the process. So yeah, on that, obviously we'll get into a lot more detail about when Genie was born and how he treated Genie and why he made decisions to do what he did to Genie. But that's not to say he didn't also regularly mistreat his son John. But he seemed to have a particular disdain for women at this point, influenced by his mother. Clark and Dorothy got married not long after they first met. This gave Dorothy no time to truly get to know the person she was going to spend the rest of her life with. Although the newlyweds initially appeared outwardly happy, all was not well beneath the surface. Clark's cruelty almost immediately began to show. He stopped his wife from ever leaving the house, isolating her from her friends and family. He also began beating her with increasing frequency and severity. The combination of Dorothy's significant head injury as a child, coupled with these routine beatings, appeared to worsen the situation, but her new husband would never take her to see a doctor. Yeah, absolutely horrendous, and he's now got complete control over this vulnerable woman.
Clark cunt.
So instead of taking her to a doctor, she was forced to carry on with her life as if nothing had happened. And she became increasingly more dependent on Clark as her condition gradually worsened over time.
See, on this, I thought it was interesting. Like, do you think Clark's doing this purely because of hatred of women? Or do you think he's doing this because he wants to feel needed and wants to be relied upon? Or alternatively, him treating her this way, she's not going to have the strength or ability to escape?
I mean, it could be a little factor of all of them, really. I mean, that's an easy answer to give, but I think definitely there's a huge influence on the way he sees women through his mother. But I also think, yeah, it's a control thing, a power thing. Maybe he didn't want to be abandoned again from this point onwards.
Yeah.
After 5 years of this, Dorothy fell pregnant with the couple's first child. And you might think that this would bring a new element of hopefulness or happiness to the Wiley household. But Clark didn't want to have children. He hated them. He considered them noisy and a nuisance, and deep down it is also possible that he didn't want the child to experience the kind of childhood he had endured. But this didn't stop him, and his children would ultimately end up experiencing something far worse. And this is where things get progressively worse. During the pregnancy, Clark's violence towards Dorothy escalated, culminating in an attempt to strangle his wife to death during the latter stages. She was hospitalized, and it was while she was recovering from this attack that she gave birth to an apparently healthy baby daughter. However, after Clark took the newborn home and Dorothy remained in the hospital, he found the baby's continuous crying to be unbearable, and therefore decided to leave her in a cold, dark garage for days. Some speculate potentially even weeks. There, she contracted pneumonia and died at just 10 weeks old. The police and social services were never informed of the baby's living conditions, and it is unclear if Dorothy even knew. 3 more children would be born to the couple after this.
I mean, the fact that, obviously, I'm assuming that she lied as to why she was brought into hospital after the strangulation. Like, the fact that they thought, it's just a terrifying thought, the idea of nurses handing over a baby to the person who did that to the mother. Like, yeah, and yeah, as you just mentioned there, Ben, 3 more children will be born into this couple, and you know, him with such a hatred for children, it's like, well, maybe have preventative measures to not conceive.
Yeah, no, completely agreed. The thing is, I've read a couple of articles online about this case, and both of them kind of just mention in passing that 2 other children passed away, and it was from pneumonia and from another medical issue, which we'll talk about shortly. But that they leave it at that, and so you can kind of skim past it and think, oh well, pneumonia and this other condition. But actually, when you dig into it, it's all down to Clark.
Yeah.
A year later, the couple had their second child, this time a boy called Robert. But it was not without complications at the hospital. At birth, doctors diagnosed the child with Rh incompatibility, which is a hemolytic disease of the newborn. Rh incompatibility happens when a mother and a baby have mismatched blood types, a condition that can destroy a newborn's red blood cells and in some cases be fatal. And unfortunately, it was in this case he passed away 2 days later. There is speculation that the child did not die as a result of Rh incompatibility, and instead passed away after suffocating on its own mucus while Clark and Dorothy weren't present. 3 years later, they had a second son born with Rh incompatibility, whom they named John. The baby boy was described by doctors as being happy and healthy despite the initial scare, though Clark was not thrilled to welcome his new son into the world. Whenever the child cried or made any noise for attention or food, Clark responded with violence and aggression towards Dorothy. He would physically force her to keep the baby quiet.
And this is a really odd comparison to make, but if you've ever been with anyone who's a new parent and how paranoid they are with being in a restaurant with a baby, or they're overly worried about the noise, and you can sometimes feel their anxiety from that, and that's just to disturb someone next to them having a coffee. And you think this instance of Dorothy will be on edge the whole time with the baby just wanting some food in their own house. If the baby cries and makes noise, she's going to be at the hands of her abusive husband. It's just the anxiety and the tension and how horrific that existence is.
Well, the fact that she would also have known they'd already lost 2 children as well under very dubious circumstances. But yeah, none of these children had any chance. And I mean, we haven't even got to Genie yet, which is just a whole nother story in itself. But yes, as I said at the start, some people just genuinely do not deserve to be parents.
The abuse was so frequent and violent that it actually stunted the development of John both physically and intellectually. This cruelty would continue until he reached 4 years old, and his paternal grandmother intervened, taking over his care for several months, during which time he made massive progress and appeared to be a much happier, healthier child, before being returned to his parents and the relentless control of his father. Later in life, John would state the following on his upbringing and his family dynamic with ABC News.
It was a family that fell apart. My parents were not very educated people. They weren't outspoken. They didn't mingle with other people. And I have a little resentment for that. My childhood was fear. They didn't give me the tools I needed. They didn't give me an education. They didn't teach me about God. But I feel like, at times, God has failed me. I didn't even know what to expect. But now that I know better, I would have expected a lot more from my parents. After time has gone by and I finally put a family together of my own, I don't have the hurt that I used to have.
5 years would pass by and another child will be born to the Wiley family. And she is the centre of this week's episode. A baby girl known only as Genie. The child's actual birth name has never been publicly released. Genie was a label that reduced her to a case name rather than a living child, foreshadowing a life that would become defined by isolation. And it is here we move to the timeline of Genie Wiley locked away from life. April of 1957, the month that has been linked with Genie's birth. Her birth itself appeared to have been completely normal. She was delivered by a caesarean section with no immediate complications or concerns, and was described as a small but healthy baby by nurses present. However, within just a day, doctors noticed a problem. Like 2 of the babies before her, Genie's blood was incompatible with her mother's, a condition that required an urgent transfusion to save her life. The procedure was performed and she recovered, and for a time, everything appeared to be fine. But this would not last for long. Over time, Dorothy's eyesight gradually deteriorated, and she was becoming increasingly more dependent on her husband. They had already lost 2 infant children, and their son John had been placed in and out of the care of extended family members. When Genie was born, her father made the decision to completely isolate the entire Wiley family from the rest of their extended family, and it's not exactly clear why. Either way, Clark Wiley wanted 0 outsiders to have interactions or place any influence on his wife and the 2 young children. He was the only person to work and go grocery shopping. Dorothy and John were very rarely allowed to leave the house, and a far worse fate awaited Genie, with many extended family members not even being aware that she was even born. Not much else is known about Genie's earliest months, but what we do know is at first her development appeared mostly normal. But even then, there were small differences. Her mother would later recall that Genie rarely made sounds, didn't babble like other babies, and often resisted being held or fed. At times, she claimed Genie may have spoken a few words, but she can never remember what they were. In other accounts, she insisted Genie had never spoken at all. At 3 months old, however, Genie was diagnosed with a congenital hip dislocation, which forced her to wear a restrictive splint for much of her first year. It limited her movement and delayed her ability to walk, which set her apart from other children her age.
So yeah, just looking now at that hip condition, it's a condition where the ball socket joint of the hip does not properly form in babies and young children. I can imagine incredibly painful.
So painful.
Anything to do with the hip makes me just wince. The ball joint as a term makes me feel a bit funny.
I know this is slightly different, but I've been around a couple of people who've dislocated their shoulder and something else, and the scream that comes out of them is like, I think it's more painful than actually breaking a bone in some instances. It's so painful.
Why did you do it? What did they do to you? Owed you money?
No, I was there to help. I was duty manager and I was first aid trained, so I was responding on the scene.
So did you pop back in?
No, we're not allowed to.
Oh.
We just have to offer comfort, ice packs, and call 999. Actually, in more recent times, we weren't allowed to call 999, and if we did, the ambulance service said, stop calling us, just get him in a car and bring him to hospital.
Oh.
Which is fair enough, because, you don't want to waste valuable resources.
You're like, well, who's going to pay for my petrol? Like, well, that's not... You're duty manager, Dan, you're on enough money. You're like, no.
It was so low paid. It was...
Was this separate to your lifeguarding stuff? Was when you were waiting for people to drown?
It was not waiting for people to drown. I mean, I was well up for it though. But no, lifeguard started, and then I kind of progressed up the ranks to duty manager.
On that ladder.
I mean, it's just one rank above, but did well.
I heard that Dan encouraged people to eat before they went swimming, just in case they got cramps, to encourage situations to happen. Have a carbonara before you come in.
Oh.
By 11 months old, Genie was still considered physically healthy, but something had begun to change. Her weight had dropped significantly, an early sign that something was already going wrong. And not long afterwards, at just 14 months, she became seriously ill with a respiratory infection. A doctor, seeing her for the first time, suggested there might be something wrong with her development, that she could potentially be intellectually disabled. It wasn't a confirmed diagnosis and just speculation at this point. But for her father, it was enough. And then everything shifted. It was around this time that Clark began to see her differently. Clark became convinced that something was wrong with her, that she was somehow less than intellectually adequate. And so he started to withdraw. He stopped acknowledging her, and soon he demanded everyone in the house do the same. This went on for the next 6 months. When Genie was around 20 months old, her grandmother was killed in a sudden hit-and-run accident. It was a tragedy, but for her father, who had a difficult relationship with his mother, it became something darker. Consumed by grief and anger, he blamed his own son, John, who had been in the vehicle with her at the time. Which, obviously Clark's relationship with his mother from a young age, obviously her owning a brothel, not wanting to be around him, but then trying to reconcile him, basically rejecting her. Then she passes away, and it kind of completely floors him, which is just, it's a very complex, set of emotions there. But then blaming the son who's in the car at the time, it's, that's just... The other thing I was going to say is John, like from his quote we read earlier, he goes on to live a relatively normal life. And he's grown up in a household you'd describe as a lot more difficult than Clark did. But he's living proof that you don't need to repeat the sins of your parents and in the same way. But I can just imagine being a young boy and your father blaming you for the death of their mother.
The other part I found interesting is when John was about 5 years old, he was taken out of the family home and placed under the care of Clark's mum, which I was surprised Clark would allow that to happen based on his interactions with her. But it seemed to actually be a much better life for John, those years that he spent with her. And it's a very odd dynamic between Clark and his mother.
So the driver who caused the accident would go on to only receive a light sentence, and that's a moment when Clark's anger turned outward and toward the world itself. From that point on, something in him seemed to break. He became increasingly paranoid and convinced that society had failed him. And it was within that distorted thinking he began to see Genie as something fragile, something defective. So he withdrew from mainstream society. He quit his job, he moved his family into his late mother's home and turned parts of it into shrines to her memory. And slowly he began cutting his family off from the outside world. What followed would go far beyond protection. It would become controlled isolation. Again, very odd fact that, his relationship with his mother then basically has shrines to her within the house, moves into her house, and he's now left with a relatively paid job, well-paid job, and he's isolating even himself at this point, and his whole family, them against the world, but very, very baffling.
Yeah, this seems to be a massive, although there's absolutely abhorrent behaviour before this point, this seems to be the switch now, because the house is all paid off. He hasn't got too many money concerns. He's not, he's not feeding these children. He's not spending money on these children. True. And now he's got them completely under his control, the whole family under his control. And this is where poor Genie, or poor all of them, this is where it really, really now starts to escalate.
This might be a mad question, given the circumstances and what's happened so far and what will happen. Do you, when reading this, do you ever feel sorry for someone like Clark? And do you feel like at this stage or earlier on, these things can be repaired? His mental disarray, perhaps, his anger at the world, his anger at women, or him constantly taking things out on his closest ones and loved ones? Or do you think this is just a complete lost cause right from the start?
It's a good question.
And I don't mean feel sorry in the sense of like, proper sympathy, but is it kind of like, I always think about these things really transiently, like, is this something that could have been grabbed at some point and repaired?
I think we haven't got the information on it, but I do question whether or not when Clark was put into care homes and things like that, if he suffered abuse and things like that as well, which would explain maybe his hatred towards his mother a bit more. Obviously being abandoned by his mum and her not wanting anything to do with him from a young age, losing your father at a young age isn't a reason to act like this. I think he's obviously got some mental health difficulties which seemingly have gone undiagnosed, so I think any intervention with that, but I also don't think he's the kind of person that's going to sit there and talk to someone properly about everything he feels. And I think him then thinking society's against him again makes me feel like that's a highlight of the struggles he's having. So I think, at a young age, intervention, I think probably. But I think when it gets to a stage where he's lost his mother, he blames his son, and all these other things, I think it probably is too late.
We talk about it a lot, don't we? We always cover cases where there are absolutely tragic and terrible childhoods. But there are also so many other people in the world that have had traumatic and horrifying childhoods that do not go on to do what Clark Wiley did. And as Tom said there, he's placing blame on everyone but himself throughout his whole life. Like John, his son had a harder childhood than him. Yep.
And he's gone on to lead a relatively normal life. Yeah, but what about you, Dan? Do you ever...
Yeah, well, like I say, I always have these transient kind of thoughts, but you're completely right. I find it boils my blood that, Clark in this situation can see his innocent children as discardable, as like something's wrong, or even if something's not wrong, it's just the noise, the crying, the whatever, the attention that these children deserve. He just wants to, discard is the word I keep coming back to. So But it does make me think, like, kind of what's going through his mind at this point. How can someone get to that stage of mental disarray to be able to see that about his loved ones? It's fascinating and horrible.
The horrifying thing is we only know about this case because Genie was eventually found.
Yeah.
And again, we talk about it in other cases, but where things like this or elements of this are happening in everyday life for people all over the world, where they're a child is completely innocent, precious, and they're born into families with parents that are capable of this type of thing.
Yeah, and even just child trafficking and things like that. It's like there's so many stories we'll never hear of, and yeah, it's truly heartbreaking. So after the family made the move into Clark's mother's house, Jeannie's world began to shrink, slowly at first, and then completely. Her father confined her to a small, dark back bedroom, separating her entirely from the rest of the family, who slept together in the living room. During the day, for 13 to 18 hours at a time, Jeannie was forcibly strapped to a child's toilet in a homemade harness, one that functioned almost like a straitjacket that he had forced Dorothy to make. There, she wore little more than a diaper, her movements severely restricted and her body tightly held in place as the hours passed by in silence. At night, he would tie her into a sleeping bag, placing her inside a crib covered with a metal screen, immobilizing her arms and legs. Sometimes she was left restrained for even longer if he felt she had been misbehaving. She was not allowed to interact with anyone but her father, who avoided her at every opportunity. Obviously, that's truly, harrowing. But obviously, in terms of just child development at this time, she's not talking to anybody. She's no interaction, no stimulation whatsoever. Only person she's having interactions with is with Clark, and they're all obviously very horrible, demeaning, cruel interactions. She's not going to school, dealing with anyone her same age, as she's unable to kind of learn basic language, basic communication, social norms.
Yeah, to be clear, they're misbehaving. Is not misbehaving. It's cries for attention or
Suffering.
It's yeah.
The other thing is, what Tom's just explained there, it's not just something that's happened for a few days or a few weeks. This is 12, 13 years of someone's life confined to that room.
Mm-hmm.
Restricted movement, punished at every turn.
Yeah.
It's truly, but I just, like almost every episode this series, I just couldn't process how anyone could do that to someone, their own child.
She was left there to fester before she could even begin to understand what was happening to her, or why it was happening. At first, there were brief moments where she was allowed outside, placed in what has been described as a small animal's playpen in the rear garden. But when she managed to knock it over and partially break free on a summer's afternoon, that small glimpse of freedom was taken away from her entirely. From that point onwards, she was confined to the room permanently. Noise became the next problem. It became dangerous. Any sound she made, any movement could be met with violence. Her father kept a large wooden plank nearby, using it to beat her if she ever cried or made a sound. In an extra effort to silence her, he would bare his teeth and growl at her like an animal, sometimes scratching at her with his intentionally overgrown fingernails. Over time, Jeannie developed a fear of cats and dogs as a result of her father's behaviour. She became quiet and she soon stopped expressing herself altogether, retreating into a world where silence was their only form of safety. But it didn't stop there.
Even that got me a little bit. Jeannie developing a fear of cats and dogs, which for the most part are the most wonderful creatures on earth and bring you so much joy and happiness and comfort. And now Jeannie seeing her dad, terrified of her dad,
Scratch and hiss and
awful.
Yeah.
Food, too, became part of Clark's control on the infant. She was fed only the bare minimum: soft foods, liquids, cereal, and soft-boiled eggs. Things that didn't require much effort for her to chew or for Dorothy to prepare. Her meals were rushed, and food was forced into her mouth quickly by Dorothy or John at Clark's encouragement. And if the child ever struggled or choked, she was punished. She forcibly had her face rubbed into the often heated bowls of food. These brief feedings were often the only moments her mother was allowed anywhere near her child. She was not allowed to clean or change Genie. Hungry and desperate, her mother would sometimes risk punishment herself, sneaking food to her late at night whilst Clark was sleeping in an effort to make sure her child wouldn't die. This caused Genie, the fact that she was having meals in the early hours of the morning, to develop an abnormal sleeping pattern, which would result in her sleeping through much of the day and remaining awake through much of the night. Which, tragically, that probably kept her more safe if she was sleeping during the day and not, while Clark was lingering around, probably in a very warped way, kept her slightly more safe. Inside that small room, there was almost nothing. It was kept constantly dark, with very little natural light entering the room, and very little for Genie to look at or interact with. There was a crib, a toilet, and a few pieces of unused furniture. On some rare occasions, she was given scraps, empty containers, bits of thread, torn pieces of magazine paper, but nothing stimulating. Through a small gap in the bedroom window, Genie could sometimes see the outside world, a piece of sky, the side of a neighbouring house, and very occasionally she could hear the faint sound of a neighbouring child playing the piano somewhere in the distance. These were glimpses of a life that she would never truly know or understand.
She wouldn't probably even know what music is. I mean, and like that bit there saying like she gets given scraps, it's like a bit of thread, a bit of torn magazines. It's like
it's how people would treat him.
Yeah, like you give
pet.
Yeah, you give a guinea pig like a bit of toilet roll for it to chew in as a toy. It's genuinely, yeah, and that's like a treat, probably a bit of thread. Like, yeah, and she the thing is like, yeah, the scenes, the sky, and all those things. She doesn't understand what those things really are, and doesn't understand the children playing or the piano. Like I said, yeah, it's just so sad.
Yeah, there's no effort to educate or stimulate this child or this baby as she's progressed to a child. There's been no effort and I guess Dorothy's not in a position to be able to do that because of Clark and the way he would punish her, but she's sneaking meals to her at night. But yet Genie knows nothing of the world or what her life is and why her life is that way.
It's like this, yeah, it's the constant state of punishment that I can't understand, because I mean, we talked about it on the Victoria Colombier episode. It's a child isn't born evil or deserve to be tortured or punished in any way. But for Clark to just have this frame of mind to be, this is her life, it needs to be her life, is completely unrelatable. It's not understandable in any way, and it's so unfair.
It reeks to me of she's my child. I created her. I can do what I want. She's his possession. It's not. He treats her like a possession, not a human being.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about it shortly, but there's allegedly a conversation that took place and which kind of hints at Clark not expecting Genie to have survived so many years, and that is perhaps because he didn't know Dorothy was feeding her at night. But
fucking hell,
maybe in his mind he was thinking eventually this would kill his child, which he was quite happy with, quite comfortable with. But this would go long beyond that. So beyond that small room, the house itself had become a prison. Clark tolerated no noise at all from anyone or anything. And I think he had, in purchasing his mother's house or inheriting his mother's house, he removed radios, TVs. There was nothing stimulating for the rest of the family, books. He also forbid them, Dorothy and John, from speaking freely, especially around Genie, ensuring that she would hear almost no language at all. He would often be found sitting with a shotgun across his lap, enforcing silence through fear. As well as this, no visitors were allowed in the house. During this period, Clark rarely let anyone leave the house, only allowing John to go to school and requiring him to show proof of identity in different ways before being allowed back in the house. He also decided to maintain thorough records of his abuse towards his family and his attempts to also hide it. So again, like cases we've covered this series, he would keep journals and diaries, and he would keep logs of what he did to Dorothy, to John, to Genie, as if he needed somehow to make a record of this.
Do you think that's though, so he can cover his tracks more than he's doing it as he's not doing it as a trophy, or do you... I kind of get the idea of his paranoia that he wants to know everything and remember everything what happens on what day, so he knows exactly what happened, rather than he's written the diary to kind of glorify it.
It's odd, isn't it? Because he not only is he recording the logs of abuse, he's also noting what he did to cover it up or to hide it. So it does, yeah. It's very brazen, very bizarre. To the outside world, the Wiley family still somehow appeared ordinary, and no one knew about Genie. Genie's mother lived in constant fear of Clark, and she was also repeatedly warned that any attempt to seek help for herself or her children would cost her her life. Genie's brother John also suffered under the same control as he grew older. He was forced into a position where he could do little but watch, or risk becoming a target himself. All the while, Genie remained in that small dark room. One investigator would later recall the following.
The child was locked in a small room and tied to a potty chair for most of her life. Completely restrained, she was forced to sit alone day after day, and often through the night. She had little to look at and no one to talk to. This went on for more than a dozen years.
So we then moved to mid-October of 1970. And yeah, this is what we mentioned a moment ago. An unusual conversation had allegedly taken place in the Wiley household the previous year. Clark was convinced that Genie would not live past the age of 12, and therefore promised both John and Dorothy that, if she did somehow survive, he would allow her mother to seek help for her. But when Genie reached her 12th birthday, he immediately went back on his word. Subsequently, Dorothy would not attempt to get help for another year and a half. After roughly 13 and a half years of Clark's abuse, Genie's rescue finally came. Earlier that month, a particularly typical and particularly violent argument erupted between Dorothy and Clark, culminating in an attack on Dorothy in front of Genie. The situation escalated to a point where Dorothy threatened to leave if Clark did not let her visit her parents. And in a rare, out-of-character moment, he apparently relented and suddenly left the house. Later that same day, Dorothy took Genie and quietly left the family home. And by then, John was 18 years old and had already moved out of the home at the earliest opportunity, leaving the two of them under Clark's control.
I found that really surprising in that moment. I mean, obviously we've covered lots of cases where abuse happens in the household, and obviously I think the most ignorant thing people can say when people are in abuse, why didn't you just leave? Like, because yeah, that's just obviously not helpful, and you know, there's reasons why they're still there. But her threatening him then, I would have thought would have been met with an escalation in Clark's violence, but him going, kind of giving her a moment and leaving, just very surprising. Yeah. When I first was researching this case, I didn't think that would be the way that Genie was discovered. No. I felt like somehow a concern would be, something would be, spotted about the parents' behaviour, or a neighbour would hear something. But no, it's literally a particularly violent incident where Clark has been incredibly aggressive to Dorothy. She's already almost fully blind in one eye. It's left her in a position where she said, I need to go and see my parents, and he's let her, which really shocked me.
3 weeks later, on November 4th, 1970, Dorothy went downtown in order to apply for disability benefits due to a lack of vision. She took Genie with her, who could barely walk. To re-emphasise how poor her vision was, Dorothy entered a social services office instead of the disability insurance office next door. Here, a social worker immediately sensed something was very wrong. The girl before her was 13 years old, but she appeared no older than 6 or 7. Which is crazy.
I'm amazed that she was able to even walk at all.
Yeah.
And again, it's just by chance Clark's left the house. Just by chance Dorothy's walked into the wrong building. That this is how Genie is rescued.
Yeah, you're right, Ben. Like, when people have been in hospital for this amount of time, the muscle wastage, and you think how long she's been tied up, you would have thought, yeah.
Yeah, from a physical point of view, to be 5, 6, 7 years a body younger than you should be is a horrifying image. The way she moved and the noises she made all suggested severe neglect. Initially, autism was speculated, but this was not the case. After confirming her supposed age with Dorothy, The social worker quickly contacted the police. Genie's parents were arrested, and the court immediately took custody of her. Due to her physical condition and almost complete lack of socialisation, Genie was sent straight to Children's Hospital, Los Angeles, where she very quickly won the hearts of doctors and nurses. However, after an extended period of time, doctors noted that Genie started to masturbate in situations where it was not appropriate, especially in the presence of older males, which made doctors think that her father might have sexually abused her or made her brother do it, even though they never found clear proof. Dr. Jay Shirley, a psychologist and expert in human isolation at the University of Oklahoma, stated the following.
Solitary confinement is diabolically the most severe punishment. In my experience, really quite dramatic symptoms can develop in as little as 15 minutes to an hour, and certainly inside of 2 or 3 days. To try and expand this to a period of 10 or so years boggles one's mind. Don't you think the doctor's job title sounds like it's a little bit of an insult? A psychologist and an expert in human isolation. Sounds like it's just someone who has no friends. But yeah, that's I didn't know that. If being isolated for 15 minutes to an hour can impact in 2 or 3 days.
Well, I mean, I was watching recently Raphael Rose,
Toughest Prisons.
Toughest Prisons, and quite often you see prisoners go in for isolation for a week or 2 weeks, and they come out saying that is the most horrible, insane thing to do, and they'd never wish it on their worst enemies. And that's just 14 days or something. And this is well over a decade.
Yeah, and it's also like, it's those isolations, they're not going there with a book or anything to take their mind of anything. They're just left alone with their minds and their thoughts, which can be a very horrible place to be for a lot of people who are in those situations.
In Genie's case here as well, because her development is now so behind as a result of this, but she's still seeing the rest of her family not in a situation that she's in. She's still seeing another child in John not in a situation that she's in. So would she have been aware or have been able to comprehend that it's only her in this, in that, or would she even have been able to comprehend that wasn't normal, which is fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah. At the hospitals, experts quickly took control. David Rigler, a psychologist from USC, and Howard Hansen, head of psychiatry, oversaw her care. The following day, physician James Kent performed her first medical examinations. Most of what doctors learned about her early life came from the police investigation into her family rather than Genie herself, due to her complete lack of ability to communicate. But even then, much of Genie's childhood remained a mystery, shrouded in secrecy and speculation. News of Genie's situation very quickly spread across the country. Almost 2 weeks later, by November 17th, several major media outlets had picked up her story. The single photograph released of Genie, dubbed The Feral Girl, drew national attention, capturing both public fascination and horror. Clark, her father, unable to bear the scrutiny and criminal charges that were coming his way, refused to speak, which is very ironic in this situation. And soon the pressure became unbearable. 3 days later, on November 20th, the morning before his first scheduled court appearance on child abuse charges, Clark Wiley placed a gun to his head and took his own life. Which, absolute coward's way out here. I also think, why is he allowed to be around a gun at this stage?
I'm surprised he's still not in police custody at this point, not being kept. So surely that suggests he was bailed.
Yeah. Garfed.
Yeah, is an as Tom said, absolute coward, absolute monster, and didn't want to face justice or responsibility there.
Clarky's got a gun.
Tune.
Wiley. Wear my Rolex. Is that Wiley? I think she's wearing my Rolex.
Yes.
It is. 2 notes were found near his remains. One addressed to his son, telling him, "Be a good boy, I love you." And another, which I thought this is such a, I don't know what the word is, such a dramatic but kind of haunting little sentence he leaves here. Either for police or the general public, he declared, "The world will never understand." I think he's right, yeah, the world will never fucking understand Clark. Like, there's nothing that could ever justify the behaviour.
Yeah, the arrogance undertone in that as well is just off the scale.
With Clark now gone, the authorities' attention turned slowly to Genie and her mother. Her brother eventually left the Los Angeles area altogether, later recounting that his mother poured all her remaining care and attention into Genie. Dorothy too would receive counselling under the supervision of Dr. Hansen. Take a seat. As charges against her were eventually dropped. For Genie, the nightmare of captivity had finally ended, but the world she was about to be thrust into was confusing and frightening. When teams of doctors first examined Genie, they found the most extreme case of child abuse any of them had ever seen. Initially, she refused to let anybody touch her, quickly pulling away from any physical contact, even while sitting on her mother's lap. The hospital staff noted that her mother appeared completely unaware of her feelings and behaviour. When she was upset, she would aggressively harm herself, and during this, she showed no emotion and never cried or made sounds. Some reports claim that she was unable to cry at all. To create noise, she would shove chairs or similar items. She was shockingly small for her age, just 4'6" and 27 kilograms. With a bloated belly, 2 sets of teeth, and pale, malnourished skin.
There are a number of documentaries out there about this case and because you'd assume, right, there's going to be a turn in this case now, there's going to be a much happier outcome. And in fact, her freedom is met by not isolation, but certainly captivity in the fact that all these researchers and scientists and doctors from all over the world now were so curious about Genie. This would become a whole new world to her. But speaking of which,
whole new world. Jesus.
But there's this documentary I watched called The Secret of the Wild Child, which we'll pop the link to. It's on the old Daily Motion website, which is a bit of a naughty website. But it showed there was a clip of Genie trying to communicate by basically dragging chairs along the floor. And that is how she's communicating with those sounds of the screechy chair leg. I also heard on this documentary the reason why they assigned the case name Genie was linking to the kind of the genie in Aladdin, a genie in a bottle, and being kept away from society for so long to then suddenly be out in the world. So that I'm not sure if that's 100% true. Don't hold me to it, but I'm sure I heard that in one of the documentaries. But there's lots of very infamous footage now of her interacting with doctors and psychiatrists, and it's it's a much more pleasant situation than she was in, but it's still under a great deal of scrutiny now.
The restraining harnesses that Genie had been forced to wear left a thick ring of bruising and calluses on her buttocks that took weeks to properly heal. Her bones were weak and incredibly underdeveloped. Her hips were misshapen and her ribcage undersized. Although her vision was deemed technically normal, she could only focus on things within the tiny room she had always known. Anything beyond 3 meters away seemed to disappear. Her gross motor skills were nearly non-existent. She could not stand straight, straighten her limbs, or move at any kind of speed or endurance. Instead, she shuffled with a trembling, clawed bunny walk, her body shaped by years of confinement and sensory deprivation.
So yeah, from this quite infamous footage of Genie walking outside, her arms and legs seem very stiffened, and her arms are kind of not by her side but upwards, and kind of clawed motions in front of her chest. It's again, I cannot believe that she can walk after what she's been through, and the lack of development there for her muscles and her bones.
Despite this, her hands worked almost normally, and her fine motor skills were determined to be at around the level of a 2-year-old. She could barely eat, as she was unable to swallow solid or soft food, and often mashed it in her mouth with her fingers. She was incontinent, unresponsive to heat or cold, and almost impossible to assess cognitively. Tests suggest a mental age of barely 13 months. Still, there were sparks of curiosity from Genie. She was fascinated by objects and by sounds, carefully seeking out their sources, though people held little interest for her. She displayed a passion for hoarding things, specifically different containers filled with liquid. Apparently, this is somewhat common for children that have experienced significant neglect or isolation. And as we mentioned earlier, she showed a fear of cats and dogs, a fear which roots would only become clear much later. Dr. Rigler would recall,
"When Susan Curtis first joined the case, Genie had a strange bunny walk and other almost inhuman characteristics. Genie constantly spat. She sniffed, she clawed. She barely spoke or made any noises. The indications were that she was beaten for making noise and consequently had learned basically not to vocalise. She was silent most of the time."
So yeah, this Susan Curtis, she was in the Genie documentary that I referenced. certainly in the context of that documentary, seemed to genuinely want the best possible outcome for Genie, was doing amazing work with her, and made a great deal of progress. But yeah, it would still become quite convoluted from this point onwards.
It is amazing, like you touched on earlier, Ben, that, you know, Genie at this point has got a mental age of 13 months, motor skills of a 2-year-old, weight of a 6-year-old. It's amazing she's survived this horror. And it just shows actually how strong she is, how brave she is.
Completely.
Even with a complete lack of context or environment, it's it really shows how incredibly resilient Genie is.
So at first, Genie barely reacted to anything around her. It was only through something as simple as a small puppet that doctors managed to draw even the slightest response. Slowly, pieces of Genie began to surface. She learned to dress herself, to use the toilet, to move with a little more confidence. She then started gaining weight, growing stronger, but still her behaviours told a much deeper story. She became intensely attached to objects, guarding them and becoming distressed if anyone touched them or tried to take them away from her, especially small, colourful plastic items. Over time, she began to notice people too, first quietly, then with growing recognition. She formed a bond with her doctor, following him everywhere, and would light up when familiar faces appeared, sometimes desperately trying to make them stay. And she would not understand the dynamic or the concept of going and leaving and returning, obviously not understanding that these people were in occupations and that this was work for them, so she didn't understand the coming and going element of it. But there were still shadows of her past. Repetitive behaviours, sudden tantrums, and strange fascinations like dropping or breaking objects over and over, as if trying to make sense of something that she couldn't fully express. Then, gradually, something remarkable began to happen. Genie started to learn. Her mind, which was once thought to be almost unreachable, showed signs of rapid development. She began mimicking sounds, forming words, and understanding more than anyone expected her to be able to. And in one moment, during a small earthquake, she did something that she had never done before. Frightened by the movement, she ran to the people she trusted and spoke, seeking comfort. It was a breakthrough, a quick glimpse of who she might have been and who she could still become. But even as she progressed, it was clear Genie wasn't just recovering, she was becoming a subject of intense scientific interest. For 4 nights, Dr. J. Shirley and his team assessed Genie constantly. They wired her to instruments that monitored the activity in her brain while she slept. In doing this, they found an unusually high number of, quote, sleep spindles, which was considered an abnormal brainwave pattern, raising the question, was Genie brain damaged from her years of abuse, or had she been intellectually disabled from birth? And one of the other key questions that the team was trying to answer was, had she missed the critical period for acquiring language? And this was a big part of, because she was technically aged past her key developmental years, had she missed the chance to learn these things? That was the big kind of conflict, and different experts had different opinions here. More than a century before Genie was discovered, another child forced the world to confront the same questions. In the year 1800, deep in the forests of southern France, a boy emerged from the wilderness, naked, silent, and alone. He appeared to be around 12 years old, but he could not speak and seemed entirely disconnected from human society. He would become known to the world as Victor of Aveyron. Like Genie, Victor became the focus of a series of experiments, and a young physician named Jean-Marc Gaspard Itard, fucking hell.
That sounded fucking phenomenal, mate.
Jean-Marc Gaspard Itard spent years trying to teach Victor language and human connection. But while Victor did learn some things, speech, the foundations of human communication, remained just out of reach for him. 2 specific children who were separated by more than a century, but bound by the same question. What happens when a child grows up without language, connection, and without anyone at all? And yeah, very eerily, a film about Victor, which a lot of people at the time did not believe to be real, It was called The Wild Child. Actually premiered exactly a week after Genie was first discovered. So an eerie little coincidence there. Now, during Genie's sessions with various psychologists, doctors and linguists, she managed to learn 100 words during her first few months with the team, including doctor, ball, dog, sky, shoes, angry, sad and happy, as well as numerous greetings and several other expressions. From this, the team predicted a successful outcome, and they suggested that there was potential to fully cure the girl of her isolation, neglect and abuse. Now, this is where, obviously, the headlines, this film has helped attract more attention to Genie's case itself. Experts from all over the world were flying in to be involved in this particular case, and different experts with different pursuits, motivations and specialisms, each one of them felt that they could learn something from Genie. And this is where her new, quote-unquote, free life, she becomes kind of the focus of studies. I understand that they're basically trying to rehabilitate her now and give her the social development that she's missed out on for many years. But she is placed under so much scrutiny now. It's a whole nother kind of prison that she's placed in.
Yeah, I feel a bit torn about this because she's already been part of a sick and twisted experiment from her dad for over a dozen years. And like you said, Ben, fair enough, she's in a completely different environment and is being helped and rehabilitated. But to be part of another scientific experiment by so many feels a bit wrong. But at the same time, I see there's so much to be learned from this. But she doesn't deserve that sort of focus when she's had none whatsoever for the first stage of her life.
Well, this leading question, all these different experts from all over the world, the leading question essentially was, could a teenager still learn to talk? We acquire language not because we are taught it, but because we are born with the principles of it. Nature, not nurture. But there may be a deadline for acquiring them. So they're suggesting that because she's past these developmental years, it's too late for her to, you have to be born around the principles of language to learn it. And I guess your upbringing shapes a lot of who you are and what you do and how you behave and how you perceive things. And she's missed all of that. Well, not only missed it, but been kept in an absolute state of hell.
The thing is, you do see it in children. Like, obviously, children develop at different stages and different times and stuff. But you do see often when a child is late to the development stage of language and finds it hard to keep up with other children, you do see all sorts of, anger, upset, trauma develop, which obviously they can battle through. But it just shows how important language is right from the start as a foundational thing.
Yeah, completely. I mean, we'll just play a quick clip now, which is Genie with Dr. Susan Curtis. And this is Genie being taught to put words together. And so she's shown pictures and word associations with these pictures. And she's asked to basically form sentences from these different pictures and form a sentence. And she can form a part of it, but then the other part is muddled. So in this clip, she's saying the words, I like log. But at one point it was I log like, and it was, the arrangement of it and putting them all together didn't quite work. But here's a clip of Genie with Dr. Susan Curtis.
Let me see. The log? You found a picture of a log. I didn't even know you knew what a log was. Where do you see a log?
Eventually, it was decided that Genie was ready for her first foster placement. Her first placement began almost by accident. What started as day trips turned into a temporary quarantine after a suspected illness, and quickly into a contested bid for custody. In her first foster home, Genie's physical recovery continued, and she even began showing signs of puberty. But her behaviours remained shaped by her past, hoarding containers of liquid, reacting with intense fear to animals, and struggling to regulate her emotions. Dr. Butler claims she was making real progress, becoming more verbal, less self-destructive, more controlled, but at the same time, she grew increasingly protective, restricting access from the research team and framing them as harmful. What followed was less a collaboration and more a quiet power struggle over Genie's care, with Dr. Butler positioning herself as advocate while researchers questioned her motives and even her desire for recognition. That conflict ended abruptly when Dr. Butler's custody application was rejected, and Genie was instead placed with David and Marilyn Wrigler, a decision meant to be temporary, but which ultimately lasted years. In their home, Genie made some of her most visible progress. Her health improved, her social world slowly expanded, and she began learning basic life skills, forming attachments, and tentatively engaging with language. Yet the picture was far from simple. She still struggled with impulse control, trauma responses, and deeply uneven development, excelling in some areas while remaining profoundly delayed in others. Her language in particular became the centre of attention. Her vocabulary grew rapidly, but grammar lagged behind, leaving her speech fragmented and childlike. Heartbreakingly, as her words developed, so did her memories. As repetitive phrases about her father's abuse began to surface, offering glimpses into a past she was only just beginning to understand. On paper, she wrote the following.
Father hit arm. Big wood. Genie cry. Not spit. Father. Hit face. Spit. Father hit big stick. Father is angry. Father hit Genie big stick. Father take piece wood hit. Cry. Father make me cry. Father is dead.
This is what I was going to say. It's so interesting to now she's actually in an environment, a somewhat stable environment, and she's learning about context and things around her. It's these memories will be locked away in her brain, but as she learns language and socializes with people and has interactions, these memories suddenly become unlocked.
So is it more of a case she's this is the first time she's able to actually articulate? It's tricky, isn't it? 'Cause we'll never know the extent of that, because it might be a case of she suppressed these memories and her treatment and how she was treated, and then has learnt, I don't know, something's triggered it for it all to come flooding back, or she's just never been able to vocalize it in any way beforehand.
But she's learning what abuse is and how it's inflicted and what was done to her, and the fact that she was now a victim of abuse.
Well, that's it. She had a lack of context, didn't she, for the first part of her life. So in her brain, effectively, the abuse and the trauma and the terror is just normality. That's her brain can't comprehend anything else. But as she learns a wider environment and what's right and what's wrong, it's becoming more clear for her, perhaps. The summer of 1975. Controversially, after being acquitted of any child abuse offences, Dorothy, Genie's birth mother, applied to resume the care of her daughter, and it was granted. She returned to her childhood home and was reunited with her mother. However, Dorothy, who was now in her late 70s, soon found the arrangement too difficult, as she struggled to provide adequate care and support for the 18-year-old. After the brief reunion, Genie was sent back into the foster care system, where she is alleged to have suffered from further abuse, harassment and bullying. We move forward 4 years, May 12th, 1979. In what has been described as a bombshell moment, Genie's mother, Dorothy, launched legal action against the Los Angeles Children's Hospital, as well as a series of doctors and psychologists who worked with Genie. She claimed a use of excessive and outrageous testing on her daughter. It's claimed that the researchers gave testing priority over Genie's welfare, regularly and repeatedly pushing her beyond the limits of her endurance. An LA Times article about the lawsuit used the following headline: "Retarded girl used for profit, suit alleges. Hospital staff accused of exploiting deprived patient." It is believed that the suit was eventually settled some 5 years later. However, it has also been stated that the case was dismissed by the Supreme Court due to a lack of substance.
By 1988, Genie's story faded from public view. After her mother regained legal control, all contact with the research team was cut off, ending not just the study, but some of the only stable relationships Genie had known. What followed was far less hopeful. She's moved between multiple foster homes and institutions. The reports that some were abusive and much of the progress she had made began to slip away. Those who briefly saw her described a girl who had become withdrawn and deeply unhappy. Later accounts suggest she eventually found a more stable placement, where she could communicate in small ways, particularly through sign, but she was never fully able to recover. In the end, Genie became both a breakthrough and a warning. Her case helped shape major ideas about isolation, neglect, language, the brain, and the limits of human development, but it also left behind questions about whether she was truly cared for or simply studied. Those closest to her later admitted that the line between helping and researching had become blurred. Today, Genie is still alive, living privately under state care. Her later life largely unknown, but unfortunately there's no happy ending in her heartbreaking story. And that was the case of Genie Wiley, the feral child.
There's so much, we've been through so many different cases this series, but as I said, when we first had that list of 100 or so cases, this one just stood out to me because I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. And Dan, you said something along these lines at the start of the episode. She was given no chance. She was born into a life that she was given no chance to live at any point, all because of one man who had complete control on that family.
Yeah,
utterly heartbreaking case. As I've said, guys, there's lots of documentaries out there about Genie and her life and the life after she was rescued. So I'll pop all of those and all the other references for this week's episode in our Facebook group, which, by the way, we're about to move to the decompression session. Thank you so much for all the new people joining the Facebook group and suggesting things for the old DC, the old DS. But we'll get that all in the group. It's I Could Murder a Podcast, True Crime Listeners and Discussion Group.
So this, guys, is the time of the episode where we do the decompression session, a little bit of light relief at the end of the episodes, where we ask you guys to get involved, and also we have other means of getting some other light relief involved as well. Dan's going to soon play a question that we've received, and then we'll answer a couple of questions that you guys have fired to us. And if you want to get involved, as Ben said in our Facebook group, you can ask in there or send us an email at hello@icmap.co.uk. And don't worry, if we haven't got to your question, we've got some plans of how we can answer them in mass as well. But loving seeing all the creativity you guys are coming up with in those questions. So please don't be shy.
Oh, this looks like a good one, right?
Oh my God.
Hey Tom, Ben and Dan, how's it going? I hope you and the I Could Murder a Podcast team are well. All friends. Podcast friends. I know that you guys can get into some pretty heavy stuff, and that you like to have a little decompression session at the end of your episodes. And I've been given the honour of asking you a daft question to try and lighten the mood a little bit. So my question for you is this: if you could only have one for the rest of your life, what are you going to go with? Here are your choices. Ketchup, tomato ketchup, brown sauce, or mayonnaise. You're only allowed one for the rest of your life. Good luck with that. All the best, guys. Keep up the great work.
James.
Wow.
Mr.
Buckley.
Wow.
There you go. I mean,
I've gone straight away.
Go on.
Please.
Please, Dan, please.
Brown sauce.
Oh.
All the fucking way. Mayonnaise can fuck off. I quite like ketchup, but it's brown sauce, baby.
Wow.
I mean, James is going to be unable to give us more context here, but do you think it's a case of no other condiment ever? Like you couldn't have hot sauce as well. It would just be what this sauce is.
It's one of, is it? One of, and the other two get cold?
They get cold, but I don't know if it means you're culling all others.
Presumably.
Because I would have hot sauce with mayonnaise. I love that.
Oh.
Oh, right. Bit of kind of sriracha vibes.
That's bold, Tom. Mayo.
Controversially, I'm going to go with mayo.
Wow.
That is crazy.
Brown sauce, I do like brown sauce, but ketchup is... live or take it.
I'll complete the trifecta then. I'll go ketchup. I fucking hate mayo, and I quite like brown sauce, so I'm kind of,
Yeah, I reckon my answer is going to be unpopular with the viewers, but
I think mayo have some big fans out there. But
I think a lot of hate though.
I don't trust the texture.
Fucking hate it, and Dan straight away said they could fuck off. So I think there's two thumbs down for mayo already. But we'll do a little poll on that. And see where everyone else
but that
thinks.
kind of works. If we were stuck on a desert island and we all had one condom each,
the mayo's going to go bad quickly, isn't it?
Very,
egg
God.
based. Yeah. don't really want to get the shits on a desert island. But yes, thank you, James. Much appreciated. Yeah, all different answers. We'll want to hear what you guys think of that as well. We've also got a couple questions, food based. I thought keep it food based. So a couple emails came in. One comes in from Joe. Some of the wording in these things is great. Hey dudes, love the podcast. Having a raging argument with a brother right now. I would love to get a conclusive answer which we think you guys could supply. So raging argument. This one's really got the brothers angry with one another, you know. And here we go. If you're stuck in a human-sized pickle, would you be able to eat your way out, or would you suffocate before you escaping? He said, you basically owe me an answer because I put him onto the pod, so you're welcome for an extra listener. Keep up the good work. Love you lots.
Nice one, Joe. And Joe's bro. I'll go straight away because, I am suffocating to death. I do not like pickle at all. If I go to McDonald's, no pickles, extra mustard. So I'm dying. I'm resigned to my fate.
Oh, rest in peace, Ben.
Yeah. Can I not even claw my way out? I have to be eating it.
Yeah, that's the challenge. That's the request.
Damn.
I mean, first of all, I hope your argument's over now. I hope you're still not arguing. But if you are, I could easily eat my way out of a pickle. This can't become a challenge. I'm already doing some wieners soon, but I bloody love pickle. Big fan of it. Could eat it for days.
I'm thinking of it more from a scientific perspective, which I think they might be arguing about, is if you appeared in the pickle, you're not going to be able to have a breath. So can you eat
quick enough
to get out?
He's confident, boy.
Okay.
He is confident.
There you go. So there you go. Yeah. I'm going with, I'd give it a good go. I'm not sure if I'd make it through. I like pickle as well, but I think more of that if you're fully immersed in it, eating without breathing, difficult. But then Dan has an interesting way of eating, so we'll never know.
To be fair, it depends how girthy the pickle is, right?
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, if it's a big boy girthy width, that can take some time. But
true.
Are you eating upwardly, Dan, or are you? Because then you've got to swallow while you're like this.
No, straight out.
You're straight forward, are you?
Yeah, upwards, mental, because they're
absolutely
naturally high.
Might be quicker to the surface that way, though. If it's a wide pickle, this is why the brothers are arguing.
You're not buoyant inside the pickle.
No, but it might be more pickle to make your way through forwards as opposed to upwards.
I don't think. Well, if it's a girthy one. If it's a chode pickle,
you don't get many wider than longer gherkins.
Yeah.
No.
But you don't get many human-sized ones either. So, okay. So I hope that settled the argument, Joe. I don't know if it did. The next one comes from Natasha. Hello, you lovely boys. Been listening to your banger podcast all the way from South Africa. Absolutely smashing it.
Wow.
Lovely
Thanks.
stuff. Thank you, Natasha. In this fantasy scenario, imagine you were drafted into combat, but you're only allowed to use fruits and vegetables as weapons. What would your weapon of choice be? E.g., a carrot carved into a knife. Reasons for war also up to you. P.S. coming from a registered dietitian that so badly wants to apply to the IGMAP cult. Thanks for the amazing work, guys. So yes, it's not as dark as it sounded about being drafted in combat and all that stuff. Slightly lighthearted. So what kind of weapons would you think would be useful from a fruit or vegetable world?
Maybe a watermelon.
That's
Drop it from a great height.
One-time use.
Not the catapult woman. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Oh,
God, yeah.
Oh, be nervous. I would be nervous.
One-time use, is there anything I'll say about that?
Oh, I only got one watermelon. I haven't got a bounty of them.
Imagine you use fruits.
Well, I presume if you're in an army, you've got ammunition.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, watermelon, why not? Go watermelon. Put a load of elastic bands around them. All over myself.
Pineapple.
Good shout. Good shout.
Because I even think with that you could cut it and then have the spikiness and have ninja stars kind of vibes.
That is a really good shout. Yeah, I straight away thought of frozen peas, pea shooter, just in a, which probably won't do much damage, but you never know.
Frozen peas famously used to help cure injuries,
but this time,
but you could be the medic.
Yeah, I'm up for that. Yeah.
What's a common
First aider,
food that people choke on?
People choke on
all the time. Struggle. Oysters,
grapes.
Yeah, oysters famously not fruits or vegetables as well.
No, that's true. Yeah.
But there you go, Natasha. And of course, you can be officially, I'm going to say it here, the registered dietitian for the cult of IGMAP. So
you got the job.
Yeah, you got the job, Natasha. Well, so thank you so much for your question there. And yes, guys, if you want to get involved, please send us an email at hello@icmap.co.uk, or you can use the group and get in contact with us there over on Facebook. We love to hear from you. And yes, just a little bit of light relief at the end of the eps.
And don't forget, everybody, just a quick little shout out to our lovely sponsor, Holy. They've really been looking after us. There we go. Don't forget, you can get 10% off your first order using code ICMAP. Or if you want £5 off an order, use ICMAP5 at checkout. And we've been getting amazing response about this. People genuinely love it. And we do too. We're drinking it every single day of our lives at the moment. So,
and yes, guys, it's not just for energy. It's also really good for the hydration side of things. And if you're like me, you enjoy a little beer on a weekend, it's really good the next day when you're feeling a little bit ragged. It generally helps you perk up. And yeah, it's been absolutely lovely. It's a very easy sponsor for us because we all genuinely love the product. So why not get involved? But thank you so much, guys. We'll be back again next week with another case in the darkest series of all time. We're not doing the audience vote this series because it's a slightly different kind of series, but we'll be back next week with a brand new case. So be sure to check that out. And until next time, like we always say,
I've got a cryptic clue.
Oh, fucking hell.
It is. Yeah, who knows about next series?
Benjamin Carter's Cryptic Clues.
Okay. So the cryptic clue for episode 12 of series 13 is Mary's husband's Brill cream. Mary's husband's Brill cream. It's on its knees, guys. It's on its knees.
Yes, I think that's probably slightly more gettable, but
Thank you.
in a way,
Thank you.
doesn't make sense in a lot of other ways.
Cryptic.
Cryptic just doesn't mean incorrect.
Yeah.
But yes, guys, until next time, like we always say,
We say this all the time.
keep doing what you're doing.
Unless. Wow. Oh, unless it's finding yourself mysteriously within a human-sized pickle.
don't choke on oysters.
Don't choke on.
Don't bring oysters to a fruit fight.
Don't bring oysters to a fruit fight. Yeah.
All solid advice.
Solid foods.
See you later, guys. Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Till pip.